So I'm going to dive straight in and basically start with the project that we're working on, which is original Stargate design, and this one is the Abydos class. And the main thing that sort of makes this design a little unique, let's bring up the other screen, is that you have the core ship. So it's an escort heavy patrol ship, and then different modules can be added to increase the ship's capabilities, be it offensive, be it defensive, troop transport, even scientific missions, depending on what needs. Different pods can be applied to the ship. And here's sort of where we're at. So here's the core ship, and here's sort of the areas that it docks onto its different modules. So there's different clamp sections. There's an area where power from the main ship would be attached to the different side modules, and then there's crew entrance ways that allow crew to transfer from the core ship to the different modules. The connectors, where the crew basically access the ship, and where the power supply to the ship. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I tend to get focused when I'm working, so I might be quiet on any questions that are asked. Thanks. So how are you doing today? So what kind of wall are you hitting? Well, hopefully I can get those brain juices flowing. Shapes in there just to sort of break it up from the mundane. Like even here, like when I cut it into it, I added a lot of angular shapes just to give it a little bit of eye appeal, I guess you'd call it. And even when I do square shapes, I try to build up some layers to them, so you have your squares and then sort of pop them up a bit. And even for like in little areas like this, I sort of make them into almost like vent spaces. Make them a little more interesting. Just toss some slant in there. And over years I learned, layers, layers, layers. So I started off with, wide areas and then add a little bit more and a little bit more and fine tune until I'm sort of happy with what I got. I can't remember if it was you that I mentioned it to, but one of the things that I've got into a habit is sort of when I get to a point where I feel like stopping, I do some renders of different angles, and then I actually print them out and take a pencil and sketch some ideas for different panels, different details, just call it a quick poor man's way to sort of explore some ideas before hopping back in. Now, part of my brain here is telling me you're almost going overboard with turrets, but more is, I guess, better than less. Well, congratulations on getting a printer. Definitely look forward to what you end up printing out. That's still part of my New Year's plan. Just trying to get through all the different things I want to try to do, so pacing myself a little bit. And yeah, I like to work in little tiny details that, well, as a fan I appreciate, and I'd like to think other fans appreciate when they notice it. Like, people always tell me that when they look at models that I make, they like to look over them, and there's always something new that they discover when they're looking at them. Debating if I want to put anything else in here, but I think it's pretty much good with what it has. That's always the other challenge, is you try to keep everything balanced as far as detail on the model. You don't want one area to become super fine while other areas aren't as developed. Creates sort of an unbalanced feeling. Well, that's fine. No, just basically saying congratulations on the printer, and looking forward to sort of what you do with it. For myself, 3D printing is still part of the next, or well, I guess it's this year's plan. I'm just trying to pace myself because I have so many different things going all at once. So I'm trying to sort of get a base of what I want to accomplish going first, and then expand off of that. And then I think the other thing I was talking about was just detail in models in general, where it's always hard to keep a balance of level of detail throughout a model, because it's so easy to get lost in an area and end up with things super fine, and then once you zoom out you end up with areas that feel undeveloped compared to what you were working on. So I'm always constantly zooming in, zooming out, just to see how different areas feel. Okay, so basically a printer for a similar concept to what I was talking about, doing renders and printing them out and drawing up different ideas on them. Once I started to sort of do that with my own models, I the other way, like I did pick up a tablet so that I can actually sketch directly on it on the computer, but nothing the same as sitting down with a pen and paper and, you know, just doodling. Feeling to it. Well, I must admit this one's actually coming along pretty quickly. There's some models where I feel like I just sit there and stare and wait for ideas to come, and you know, it can just take me a month to sort of get anywhere on it. And this one's actually flowing quite good. the good thing with the other pods is at this point I feel a very firm idea of where I want to take them, which is probably what helped with this one as well. Like even looking at the drawing, like it's pretty basic, but you know, I had a pretty clear idea that I wanted to run turrets along there, I wanted to have some sort of beam weapon in there. Still want to play a bit with some sort of antenna array. And then I had ship pods. I was sort of tossing out the concept of like a torpedo. Missiles or drones I would be firing. And my first concept sort of had it as an angular thing with, you know, different ports for missiles going along the angle. But that one didn't really, you know, sink in too much for me. So my second one was more of a standard, you know, I guess you'd call it more of a normal shape. So this is more probably what the next one that I'll do will end up being. And then my planetary assault pod, originally I was going to do it with sort of like a hangar bay, but I'm almost thinking that I might have sort of like its own little miniature pod attached into it so that it can detach, beam down to a planet. It would work as a forward military base, but it would also carry military vehicles. And then it would also have weapons that would be geared for orbital assault. So while the ground troops are doing their thing, the ship from orbit can soften up larger military targets so that it eases to taking over you know, a fortified base. You know, they can disable the shields on the base from orbit and allow the troops to go straight in. Or if there's a large group of, you know, enemy military troops on the ground, they can bombard them from orbit before the troops head in. So quite a bit of sort of thought has been going into this one. And I also had a friend that suggested doing sort of a science pod, and sort of the logic behind that would be Terry's way of involving the civilian population in the program. So to keep all the different people happy, you know, you'd have, you know, your side. Well, one of the things, like with, I'm sure, you know, I've done Stargate models for years, and I want to take all these different ideas and toss them together into some sort of Closure World. That's almost a tongue twister. Fiction or other modern. No, I was just so well thought out as I do want to incorporate it into a guide or art book in the future. So it's something that I actually want. Doing her take their own. Yeah, the only bad thing about the art book is I have a feeling that's going to be a bit of a long-term project. I don't think it's going to be, done by the end of next year, especially with sort of other things that I have planned and going on. It'll also be something that once I sort of get a framework for what I'm doing with it, it might be something that I can open up into a sort of a community project. that looks a lot more better. Still want to sort of fill in the back a little bit more. I feel like it's still just a little too bland for my own liking. Well, and sometimes it's not even the big things that, make it look interesting, like just, raising those few sections there, already made a huge difference in how it looks. That's almost the big challenge is, knowing when to go all out or when to hold back a little bit. And hopefully I'm helping get your own creative juices going. Oh yeah, that's 100 times better. for these oopsie moments. I just had one of those. So we'll just here. That's not quite how I want to run it through there. Yeah, that's better. Because while I was working away, I ended up breaking the front there. That was a and nobody will ever know the wiser. Make sure I didn't do any other little oopsies anywhere. Looks like everything else is good. Well, I try to save often so that if I ever do make a mistake, I can just sort of cut out the sort of a mistaked area and sort of replace it quickly. But sometimes you don't always notice, and you keep working, and then you end up with a time-consuming oopsie. Oh, you mean this side of the ship? Well, part of my plan is I do want to do some renders of it being in a shipyard, and some of these may not be attached at the time, so I'm sort of planning ahead so that I have all the parts I need to do what I have to do. Well, she's again coming along pretty quick, and I do try to sort of work in a direction, so you know, the main part I sort of wanted to get accomplished today was sort of this front area anyways, so all in all I think I've done pretty good. And then I'm probably just going to carry on along the sides, fill those in, probably fill in this little inset next, finish off filling these in a little bit more, and then basically it's just going through and paneling the top and adding a few little small details, and this one will be pretty soon done like dinner. And sort of a quick glance of where we're at right now. Trying to think of if it's even worth adding antennas onto this section. Like if I did, I probably would maybe work them in sort of over here, maybe a set here, and maybe a set somewhere here coming out. sort of looking at it against the whole ship here. And these darker bands I want to sort of fill with windows, so it'll be sort of similar to the rest of the ship. And half the idea of the gunship pod is it adds additional firepower, but it also adds additional crew space. In a way, I almost feel like I'm building the Stargate equivalent of the Defiant from Star Trek, because this is going to be a tough little ship. And I always do like looking at it sort of detached too. You know, just the little mechanical aspects, you know, as a modeler and, you know, just as a person in general. Like, I always like mechanical things, and seeing those always, you know, sort of excite me, even if it's, you know, my own model, somebody else's model. I really like the industrial, mechanical, functional aspect of a design. And with these areas, I'm almost sort of tempted to maybe inset them a little bit and put some sort of dome structure on each side and sort of utilize it as, even though it's feeding energy up, pods themselves are also, to a certain level, self-powered. So they may not necessarily have the same amount of output as the main ship, but you know, if the main power on the ship goes out, you know, it'll allow them to stay, you know, let's say some like 50, 70% functional. And I believe I sort of mentioned last time I was streaming the video, these are sort of going to be the areas where the actual nameplate of the ship will go. So you sort of have a light that shines down on them, and you know, the smaller plaque will be for the country designation of whoever's sort of in command of that specific ship. And then the actual name of the ship and probably registration number would fit in along this plate. And then its little bay there, not quite big enough to carry a fighter, but you know, it'd carry something like a shuttlecraft or something like a puddle jumper in there. Sort of adds a little extra versatility to the ship, because you know, as nice as beaming down to a planet is, I'm sure there's certain circumstances where that's not always an option. You know, be it something with the planet's atmosphere that blocks transport, or damage to the ship where they can't actually beam down and they need to get supplies or access a Stargate to repair the ship. So a lot of redundancy sort of planned into this design. Just trying to see if I actually have a picture of the scaling. So that sort of gives you the idea of the size of the ship compared to the Daedalus. So quite a bit smaller, but again, better utilization of technology. And it sort of fits a role that, you know, Earth is sort of missing. Like, you have big ships, which take a lot of time to build, but, you know, having smaller, quicker ships that can be sort of form-fitted to specific missions, you know, would definitely aid our sort of growing military and our growing sphere of influence. That said, I think I'm gonna head off and just trying to assemble a desk, so I have a feeling that I'm going to be conscripted into helping finish that off. So thank you for everybody that showed up, and definitely appreciate it, and look forward to doing this again. Definitely plan to do these, you know, reasonably regularly, depending on, you know, full-time work and that kind of stuff. Okay, everybody have a good night, and once again, thank you.